Could we stand for the Israeli national anthem? Thank you. And thank you to everyone who has come this evening. This is a very important meeting. And I told my wife earlier today, I said this is actually one of the most important things that we do all year long is this evening, as we remember the tragedy of the Holocaust. You could be seated. I love the church, but my name is Greg, and I serve here at Gateway Church, and I love the church. I've been a part of the church since 1982. But let us be honest for a few moments here and say the church has not always done everything right, and we've done some things desperately wrong. Because the church is like any other organization made up of people, and people are people. And perhaps you know this, but I thought it would be appropriate for me to remind everyone that in 1543, there was a book written that was called On the Jew and Their Lies. And it gave 7 bits of advice on how to deal with Jewish people. And these are the 7 bits of advice. Number 1, set fire to their synagogues and schools. Well, we can remember what the Nazis did. And number 2, that their houses should be razed and destroyed. Well, they took their houses. The Nazis did that. This was written in 1543. Number 3, that their prayer books and Talmudic writings should be taken from them. And we know, we've all seen pictures of how the Nazis burned our books. And number 4, that rabbis should be forbidden to teach under pain of death or mutilation. And we know that's just what the Nazis did. Number 5, that Jewish people should not be allowed to have safe conduct on the highways, on the roads. And Jewish people were forbidden to walk the streets by the Nazis. Number 6, that usury should be prohibited to the Jews. And the Nazis took the gold out of Jewish people's teeth. And number 7, and I'll quote it exactly, I recommend putting a flail, an axe, a hoe, a spade, a distaff, or a spindle into the hands of young, strong Jews and Jewesses, and letting them earn their bread at the sweat of their brow. Those 7 bits of advice in the book on Jews and Their Lies was written by Martin Luther. The Holocaust broke out on November 9th and 10th at Kristallnacht, 1938, and it was on Martin Luther's birthday. That's the history, just history. And I think it's really important for the church to know the history, that this is actually what happened. And I think that nights like tonight are really important, that we don't forget, and that we not be among those who deny what really happened. Because I believe the Lord laid on my heart 20 years ago to raise up Corrie ten Boom type people who will stand up for the Jewish people if anything like that should ever happen again. And so I really want to thank everyone for coming here today. And this is, like I said, this is very important. At this time, I want to welcome my friend. My name is Greg Stone, and I want to welcome my friend, Pastor Greg Rosenberg, who serves with me, and also Olivia and Karis Kershid. And Greg is going to come lead us in Mourner's Kaddish, and the young ladies are going to light some candles in honor or in memory of the 6 million Jews. And sometimes people will say they perished, but really, a few years ago we had a docent shared with me from the Holocaust Museum that she doesn't like to say that they perished because they really didn't perish. They were murdered. And perish doesn't really capture what really happened. And so the candles really remind us of that. Greg?
Thank you. Before I invite you to stand with me for Kaddish, well, I wanted to say a few things before you stood, but that's fine, you're standing. I just want to say a few things before we say Kaddish together. So last August, my wife Krisha and I we were in Poland, we were in Warsaw, and while we were there, we decided we would go down and see Auschwitz-Birkenau. And nothing can prepare you for that. You can go to Holocaust museums and you can read books and see movies, but when you go there, and I recommend that everyone does, when you go there, you kind of walk into a different realm. And we saw the camps, we saw the railroad tracks. There was a railroad car there. We saw the electrified fencing. We saw the barracks, places of various torture, where they starved people and suffocated people, where they hung people and shot people. We went inside a gas chamber. It is incredibly chilling to be inside of a gas chamber. We saw the crematoriums. We could smell the sulfur. 80 years later, you can still smell the sulfur. It was for me and Krisha unthinkable, unimaginable that this could happen. Indescribable. I was so angry at the evil. So angry at all the death. We just could not imagine what it was like, all the suffering. We even saw a suitcase in a display. My last name is Rosenberg, and there was actually a suitcase that said Rosenberg and had the birth date on there. So it was unfathomable. Oh God, such a devastating place. This Kaddish prayer, it's also known as the Mourner's Prayer, is really a robust declaration of our faith in God. And it doesn't even mention death, but it is a prayer of praise to God that we say to help us regarding those who are no longer here. The Kaddish prayer, as Rabbi Eli Kaufner explains, asks for God's presence to be made great in the world in the wake of grief and loss. For me, the Kaddish prayer also magnifies God as a declaration that death does not have the final say. God has the final say. And Job declared, though they slay me, I will hope in him. If tonight is your sight for someone that you love, that you know, or you just want to say Kaddish with me for someone that you've lost, and certainly for all the souls, the precious souls that perished during the Holocaust. Let's say it together. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabba, bi'alma divra chirute, v'yamlich machute, b'chayachom yomeyachon chayedachol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv, v'yamru, amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach, leolam ulomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitparar, v'yitraman, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalel, shmei dekudisha brichu. Leila minkol birchata. Tushbacha, tushbanecha, v'havdanecha, da'amiran bi'alma, v'yamru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, v'yakol Yisrael, v'yamru, amen. Osei shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'yakol Yisrael, v'yamru, amen. Together in English we say, glorified and sanctified be God's great name throughout the world, which he has created according to his will. May he establish his kingdom in your lifetime and during your days, and within the life of the entire house of Israel, speedily and soon, and say, amen. May his great name be blessed forever and to all eternity. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he, beyond all the blessings and hymns, praises and consolations that are ever spoken in the world, and say, amen. Maybe there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us and for all Israel, and say, amen. He who creates peace in his celestial heights, may he create peace for us and for all Israel, and say, amen.
Thank you. You can be seated. Rosian Zerner, Rosian Bagriansky, was born in Lithuania. Her father, Paul, or Paulus, was a fifth-generation Lithuanian, a trained lawyer and a soldier. Her mother, Goethe, was German. She's from Lithuania. 94% of the Jews in Lithuania were murdered. Miraculously, Rosian's family survived. Miraculously, she was reunited with both parents after the war. So her survival really is a miracle. Rosian was just 6 when she was sent to a ghetto in Lithuania. Somehow her parents engineered her escape by digging a small hole in a fence, which they pushed her through. They gave her into the hands of a former employee of theirs, and he gave her a new surname, and she then became known as Ira. Now, there were some righteous Gentiles in the district of, I may not say this right, Kaunas, and they were actually saviors for the Jews. They called them angels. Rosian was guarded by these angels, and she stayed at a farmstead there until the end of the war. In 2013, there was an event for the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And they innocently, unknowingly chose this picture. If we could put that picture up. Now, this is actually a composite picture. I found this online. She did not know that I did this until I found it online just today. Okay, and but the picture is a composite, but that picture there. They innocently chose this picture to advertise their event. They did not know who the child was. It was just a beautiful picture of life in the face of the horrors of war and death. Coincidentally, Rosian was walking through an airport, and she saw the picture. And so she called the curators, and she told them, I'm the child in that photo, and I'm living proof that miracles do happen. She saw it in an airport. Rosian is a delightful, vibrant person, an artist. Her apartment's full of her artwork. It's beautiful. She has an international speakers club. She's been in 87 countries. I looked up today, there are 193 countries in the UN. So nearly half the countries of the world. It was at the 2016 March of Remembrance that we actually met. And I consider my life so much better because I know her. I love Rosian. She's one of the most kind people that you could ever possibly meet. I don't get to see her enough because life is just so busy. But Donna can tell you that earlier today I said, Donna, you've heard me talk about Rosian like this. I've described her as a person that I love like I love my mother. And I've said, I know that I say that about my mom, and I say that about your mom. And I said, is there any other woman that you can think of that I've ever described like that? We're married 41 years. And Donna said, yeah, there was a lady that we knew when we were in Hawaii in 1982. And she reminded me of Anna. Anna was a nun. She gave me her Bible. I still have her Bible. I cherish that Bible. I know that my life is better because of Rosian. And she's going to share with you basically as long as she wants. And when she's done, there'll be a time for Q&A. And would you please make welcome Rosian Zerner.
He said it all. I can leave. Thank you so much, Pastor Greg Stone. He said it. I'm proof that miracles do happen. And I'm here to share it with you. But first, I want to thank Pastor Greg Stone and the Jewish Ministries and Gateway Church and all the volunteers and staff that makes this happen. Because this is an important event, and I am of the last generation that is an eyewitness to the horrors of the Holocaust. So I have to thank all the ones that have participated in making this event happen, but most of all, I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. Because by witnessing me, you have also become witness to what so much denial is happening to obscure what happened and what will probably be rewritten in history as it's being done right now. So when you go back to your families, to your friends, share the facts, share the truth for your children, for your children's children, and for generations to come. Because if you live the truth, you become the truth, and you make a better world. So, I was born in Lithuania, which is a country that fits into Texas 10 times. It's very small. The population is about the same. It's about 29 million. And once Lithuania ruled all of Europe, all the way to the Black Sea. It speaks the oldest language on earth right now. It's based on Sanskrit. It claims to have the first university, the first center of the earth, a statue of Frank Zappa in the middle of Vilnius, all kinds of things. It was also the seat of great Jewish learning and great Jewish religion with the Gaon of Vilna. Now, Lithuania is extremely Christian, and was the last one in Europe to give up paganism. But these Christians were collaborators in many, many instances. There were some rescuers, but more collaborators. Even before the Nazi Germans came to Lithuania, there were 150 villages that were Judenfrei, free of Jews. There were instances where people were herded into synagogues and burned. There were instances where, well, I know of one that was documented of a rabbi who was studying Torah, and he was decapitated, and his head was placed in a window. And just blocks from where we lived, there was a garage, and they herded a group of Jews into that garage and clubbed them to death, or they put water hoses into their mouths until they exploded and died. And there's crowds around that smiling. So that is the atmosphere that happened when the Anschluss came and the actual Nazis began their systematic murders. I was born into a happy family, and my childhood was happy. I was privileged to have parents who loved me. We had servants, a 1935 Ford, vacations and dachas and so forth. And then we had nothing. We were herded into what was the Kovno ghetto, to be sure, which then became the Cohen concentration camp. It was a killing field, actually, from the beginning, practically. We were like in a 10 by 10 square foot place in a slum in one of the coldest winters of Europe, known in Lithuania. If you wanted a glass of water from the snow, you'd have to hurry because it would freeze before it got to your lips. The food was about 700 calories, if you called it food, and no sanitation, of course. They ruled us by fear and deceit, basically. A hospital was burned down with all the doctors and nurses and visitors and patients. And they said, oh, it was an accident. There were so many instances of shootings and of unknown deaths, but there was always an excuse. But one day, cold October day, I remember it well, we were herded into a field where the selections began as who would live and who would die. I'm sure you've seen some of the movies to the right, to the left, and they would choose who was capable of doing some good for as a worker. And of course, the elderly and the children were dispensable. They couldn't do very much, so we were the most vulnerable, and my parents realized that. And they became my first rescuers. They dug a hole under the wires surrounding the ghetto, timing the guards, timing the searchlights, and the dogs, I think they were there. And they had to do it painstakingly and precisely in a few minutes because the changing of the guard wasn't that long. And they kept doing it until they actually found a way to do that. For 5 years old, but I was at the time to go through that hole. And one day it actually happened. They pushed me through it. On the other side of the ghetto was my father's secretary in the shadows, and she was waiting for me to run over the bridge of the Yamuna River to her apartment. But I was crying so much. I was putting her in danger. I couldn't understand why I had to leave my parents, what was going on, And so I was nonstop crier. So she couldn't keep me. And I started my life on the run, in hiding, attics, barns, woods. And the people who were ordinary became extraordinary. They gave me shelter, they gave me food, but there were far too few of them. In Yad Vashem, which is the museum in Israel that has the righteous listed, there are 27,000 listed that are Lithuanians. But that's out of how many that were murdered? So you know the percentage of that. And was one of the fortunate ones, because had the war lasted any longer, there would have been no place for me to run and no place for me to hide. Pastor Greg Stone told you the percentages in Lithuania. 96%, practically 94%, depending whose figures you look at, were murdered. That's 10% of the Lithuanian population. In 1 year, mostly. So you're looking at a 4%er. So that's another proof that miracles happen. And another one was that both my parents survived, which is a very rare occasion in Lithuania. You know, to have an intact family after war was almost unheard of, because like the 4%. So the miracles just happen, and I have to live my life in gratitude every day. One of the things I'm thankful for is being able to share my story with you, because you will take that home and you will remember that such things shouldn't happen again. When my grandmother was killed even before the Germans came. She was standing in a bread line and forgot to wear her yellow star that was required. A neighbor denounced her, and we never saw her again. My grandfather, who was what you would call a capitalist, I suppose, his place was ransacked, and he was taken away, and I was told he was humiliated and tortured before he was murdered. My mother, one day, walked out with her work detail from the ghetto, took off her yellow star, and went on to friends who hid her and became a French widow. She spoke fluent French because she had studied piano at with Nadia Boulanger, actually. My father had an unusual rescue. Well, all rescues are unusual, actually. And he was working with a German, and the German could not understand this cruel war. He was taught that all Jews were Untermensch, unhuman, subhuman. And then he encountered some of these people from all professions, and they were speaking a language that was close to German, like Yiddish. I don't know if some of you know that. And so one day he drove his truck into the ghetto, picked up my father, and said, "You go." And my father became a partisan, and I think you have seen some of the movies of the life they led, but he said, "I'd like to die fighting rather than just being taken away in some form." So my main rescuer was somebody by the name of Lida, who owned a farm. And I became a shepherdess, and I picked apples, and I picked mushrooms and berries in the woods, and I had enough to eat. And I started calling her mother, and then the secretary of my father's narrative was that I was her illegitimate daughter. So I would call her mother when she came, and then my actual mother was able to visit me about 3 times during war. And one time she brought me this doll that she put together from scraps of wool. It was my only toy during the entire war. And I kept it until it disintegrated. It meant a great deal to me. So it was a, survival has many aspects to it, and we try to have a positive attitude. And that's basically what saved me, I think. The photographs you saw of me that the United Nations chose was because they were choosing a photograph of a smiling survivor to show that positive happened even during those horrific times. So it has kept me through the memories and through the traumas that we all have, scars. But we treasure life, and we treasure people like you, and we continue with every way we can. I am 87 years old now. My mother lived to over 100. My father to 96. I have 2 sons. My brother has 2 sons. My other son has a son and a daughter. And Hitler lost. So, in a way, it shows the continuity of Jewish life. It has always been here through history, and it will always be here, no matter what is out there that shows evil and lies like Holocaust denial. And I was actually going to tell you, but one of my sons' birthday is today. He's here with me. And another blank, yeah. And my other son's birthday, I got them mixed up. And Jay is here for his birthday, and Lang's birthday is on Tuesday, which is actually the day of the Yom HaShoah. So I'm very blessed in so many ways. So there's happiness and continuity and blessings. But there's also the headlines. And you can see what is happening in the world today, where anti-Semitism, denial of the Holocaust are beginning to be mainstream, far too much. It's a lie. They're perpetuating lies. And for me, it's personal. They're denying my experience. They're denying the 40 people that died that were part of my family. They're even denying the meticulous figures that the Germans kept to show how many were killed, when, and how. And they're doing this at a time where some of the survivors are still here. How dare they? So I was also asked to talk about that, and that part I'm going to read because I don't want to mess it up, actually. So, and I also want to acknowledge the people here who have listening to me for the second time today. I just can't change my story. It's the same story. But the denial is a distortion of the Holocaust. It feeds on and spreads anti-Semitism. It legitimizes it. It jeopardizes the understanding of one of the most tragic and violent episodes in humanity. We need to understand and combat this twisted and dangerous approach to history that feeds into hatred and violence against Jews. Words of violence go to actions of violence, and we will need to be very vigilant. It is pure ignorance, bigotry, and political and religious agendas by individuals, organizations. It's even state-sponsored. Iran, Qatar, and now Turkey are prime examples with official policies, sometimes inciting to violence blatantly. The doctoral dissertation of Mahmoud Abbas, the supposedly moderate leader of the Palestinians, promoted the lie that Zionists and Nazis collaborated to kill Jews in exchange for receiving Palestinian property. And he said that the murder of Jews killed by the Nazis were only 896,000. He later retracted these claims, but never in Arabic. There's a cartoon fest in Iran rewarding cartoonists with over $10,000 for the best Holocaust denial cartoon. And this is all open, and the other countries are accepting it. There's no real backlash against such distortion and hatred, basically. Iran has also flown in deniers from around the world for an actual Holocaust denial conference. The Ayatollah and other Iranian leaders seem simply free to question whether the Holocaust even happened and lied to the world. And some truly believe that. There's so much literature about this, and dehumanizing victims with denial is part of the 10-point genocide definition. Denial of the Holocaust is a dangerous lie that has many, many ramifications, and not only for Jews. The concept is basically to blot out the past and replace it with a convenient version of the present. However, understanding the history of the Holocaust is crucial to safeguarding our future, and that is not only for Jews. Others could also easily suffer from such deceptions, in addition to it being a distorted tool for anti-Semitism. In the USA and other countries, it's being used by the right and also by the left, and it's used to further political agendas. And such grotesque comparisons of the Holocaust to getting vaccinated by Marjorie Taylor Greene or to the southern border issue by OAC is just another way of diminishing the intrinsic meaning of the Holocaust. The denial actually began even as the Holocaust was happening. Nazis sought to avoid responsibility by covering atrocities like burning bodies and crushing bones, denying knowledge and officially disguising with destruction of documents. I think most of you know about this, but it's all coming together now since the world is so united little by little. For instance, Poland has laws now that prohibit culpability for Holocaust collaboration even, and punishes those who even question that Poland was involved, and they can get away with it. And with social media, simplifies denial for many, even mocking history, and often accompanied by racism, conspiracy theories, and other myths of Jewish power and fabricated forms of intolerance. UNESCO reports how half of Holocaust-related content on Telegram is false, misleading, or distorted. And even in platforms like Twitter, nearly 1 in 5 posts either denied or distort the Holocaust. How is one to discern the truth from lies when so many are lying? Some of you may have seen the movie Denial. Anybody here? Maybe not. It is a movie about the trial of David Irving and Deborah Lipstadt. He accused her of, she accused him of Holocaust denial, and he sued her, but she won. And now she is the, what is her exact title? Let's see. She's the special envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, and she was just rated by Time 100 as one of the most influential people of 2023. However, David Irving's books are still popular on Amazon, so it's not a good sign. And we really should not forget how easily hate speech can turn into hate crime, how ignorance or indifference can lead into intolerance, or how silence in the face of bigotry is complicity. Today, on this Yom HaShoah, we honor the memory of the victims of the Holocaust. We remember the 6 million Jews murdered in cold blood, 1.5 million of them innocent children. We remember their mothers, their fathers, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles. We remember how they suffered in the 42,000 camps in Europe. And we also remember the loss of what their contribution could have been to the world. Think Nobel Prize, music, Hollywood, science, artists, inventors, and so forth. Israel, helping the needy around the world and rising from the ashes to fulfill the Jewish command to make it a better world. There's a name for it, Tikkun Olam. We're commanded to make it a better world. And there's also a command called Zachor, which means remember, as we're doing today. And we also remember the rescuers who risked their and their families' lives to follow their conscience and to do the right thing. And all my rescuers are now listed as righteous at the Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Israel. So I'm here with you, another miracle in my life. And my life in USA has kind of been blessed. My father, I think you heard the story of my father, actually. My father has written his memoirs, and my whole family collection is now at the museum in Washington. And he never wanted to speak about the Holocaust until we gave him a typewriter. Remember typewriters? For his 80th birthday. And then he started writing, and some of the things that came out from his partisan life and the kind of interaction between people that happened for the sake of survival is something that is not really comprehensible to people who have not touched the Holocaust in some way or any kind of suffering of this enormous proportion. So today, I leave you with probably the most spoken word in Israel. It's Shalom. I'm sure many of you know it. It means hello. It means goodbye. It means peace, like peace in the world and peace in your hearts, from my heart to yours. Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm answering questions here or outside. What do you have in store for me here? Oh, okay. All right, here. All right. I hope you'll ask lots of questions.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Okay. There's always one that needs to be coached to be first.
So we have a couple runners that are going to help us with questions, and she really wanted to actually stand while she spoke, and so we offered her to speak but she wanted to do that. So thank you.
I'm very well cared of here.
and please. I think we have some mics that'll come around.
Can you repeat the question? Oh, they can. Oh, hi.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I have a question. After the war, and you did get back with your mom and dad, and you guys had lost everything, where did y'all go? Did you go to England first? Did you go through New York? What happened?
After the war, where'd you go? Did you go to England first? Where did you go?
That's another life. I've had many. After the war, it seems like all the Jews in Europe wanted to go to another country because they couldn't stand the one that made them suffer so much to survive. And they didn't realize that each country had their own history, right? So we decided we want to go anywhere except Lithuania. First, we went to Poland, which was totally destroyed at that time. Then we went through Czechoslovakia, Hungary, where we ended up in prison, and then into Austria, which was a divided country at that time. There was the British sector, the Americans, and so forth. And I was in a DP camp there, as a displaced persons camp. We had no citizenship, really, because the Soviets took over Lithuania. There was no more Lithuania, so we didn't have any passports or anything like that. And we ended up in Italy, which was a country that illegal ships to Israel were going at that time. We didn't manage to be on one of those ships. We lived in Italy for 6 years, and it was wonderful. It was the first stable place for a long time for me, and loved the Italian food. And I went to school finally for the first time in my life. I studied at La Scala, which is a very I was the first foreigner, I think, that was admitted to La Scala in the School of Ballet, because they just had it for Italians. And then there were the other side of my life in Italy. We came there without a penny, and we slept on the cement floors at the Jewish community centers. And my parents decided to send me to this place called Shezopoli, which was the Jewish Brigade had put this together. If you haven't heard about the Jewish Brigade, please check out their film. They're one of the most extraordinary groups that they stole 25 trucks from the Austrian government to sneak us out of Austria into another thing. So it's just like more adventure than you can have in any Hollywood movie, practically. So we slept on these cement floors, and my parents found out about Shezopoli, and they sent me into that. There were 700 Jewish children without parents there, and maybe about 24 that had parents and that were in a situation like I was, without any way to feed me, practically. They all went to Israel. They started a kibbutz, and I stayed in Italy with my parents because my father was very good at making money, and he, again, was driving a 1930, I don't know what year, Ford by that time, but that time he had a chauffeur. So life was good in Italy, and then the Korean War broke out. And my father was a very wise man. He said that if a war breaks out on the soil of America, that's going to be the last war on earth. So we came to America, and here I am. I lived in Boston when I came because there was family here. I went to school in New York at Barnard, and I came to Texas in 2013. Yeah. You got it all, I think. Unless I missed something, I can tell you later. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. It's just such an honor.
You'll have to repeat it, I'm sorry.
But my question is, so when you were in the camp with your parents and they dug the hole to get you on the outside, how did you know where you were going, or like how did your parents communicate with the people on the outside to know that you were going to go to a safe place? And then how were you all reunited after the war was over? How did that process take place?
So, could you hear her?
Yeah, I think I got the entire question, actually. But if I missed it, get back to me. I didn't understand anything that was happening. I was 5 years old, you know. I was doing what my parents told me. I was a goody-goody. And that's probably what saved me also. I just did what the adults told because I thought they were all wonderful. They did not convey the seriousness of the situation. They just explained to me I was going to be someplace different and that I should be happy. How do you explain digging a hole under a wire and timing things so precisely that it could happen? I mean, we could have all been killed on the spot. Yeah. But they risked that, and we're blessed to be saved, probably by greater plan. Yeah. Is that what you meant?
She also asked, how were you reunited with your family? How did you get reunited?
Oh, united. Well, Lithuania, as I told you, is not a very big place. And there's all these rescuers were like in an underground kind of a, I don't know, platform or whatever. I mean, the first couple were all journalists, and they were putting me from one place to the other. I had a German rescuer also. She was married to a Jew who had the most intellectual salon in Kaunas, and he was killed on the spot because they didn't want people like that around. Her daughter was a pacifist, and she would go up to German soldiers with a flower, it was like the flower trials that happened, and she would say, "Stop this, this is insane, look what you're doing." She was killed on the spot. And so the way we were united is that everybody knew where everybody else was in a way. The Red Cross also had a program for people after the war to be reunited, and Joint also did. There were some organizations that did that very well. But, some people never found their families. But we were very fortunate and blessed. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. What an inspiration you and your family are. Something I heard, the resilience, wow, of your family. And I hear so much hope, and thank you for that. I wonder if you could offer, because you and your family have experienced so much and have overcome so much, and I see that is your resilience. I can see what an empath and how compassionate of a woman you are. It's so beautiful. What are some things that you and your family did when you felt you lost hope?
The last question.
What did you and your family do when you felt like you lost hope? How did you deal with it?
That happened many times. Being on the run and in hiding was not an exciting life, that's for sure. Being in the ghetto was horrible and led to death. So we didn't have very many good choices, really. The thing that sustained us is that life is precious. Life is something that is the only thing we really own. Everything can fall apart. And that was the goal, to live. And it's apparently, I found out later, is a command in Jewishness because it supersedes all other commands. So we were guided in some way to do the right thing at the right time. And there were very close shaves at some points. But here I am with you tonight. And thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you. So still, somebody from the other side, finally.
It's never a surprise when I appear here that something cuts me to the quick. And the words from Martin Luther, I was raised Lutheran, and I've never heard anything like that in my 50 years of being. My question directly is, having read The Diary of Anne Frank and Night and Man's Search for Meaning by Frankl and seen as many movies as I can, they all address miracle and forgiveness and hope. But do you have any inkling from where that seed of unbelievable, unjustifiable hatred stems from for you and your people?
What was that question? The last sentence.
Do you have any idea for where the undeniable, unjustifiable, horrible hatred came from?
You know, I always think there are no mountains without the valleys. And the evil comes together with the goodness sometimes. In my case, I focused on the goodness because I was surrounded by people who were good to me. They couldn't do very much. I mean, it was like an avalanche there, but they were good to me. So that is my legacy to myself, is that evil is there, but you can deny it in your heart and seek the goodness that is given to each person who's in God's image, basically. So if you go with a greater plan and let it guide you, you will know you're at the right path. I didn't know it, but I followed it. And that's what brings me to your question today. I'm happy to answer it. Did I answer it all of it? Did I answer all of it? Or is there something I left out?
I guess specifically in your experience over 70-something years of seeing the world devolve in a lot of ways in its ability to despise Jewish people, is there a kernel that you have seen of that? The origin beyond plain old evil?
We're taught that there's a both, but you can choose. What I'm saying is there a way that you can accept what is good and reject what is bad to a certain extent. There's a greater plan. You can't do that. And I'm not the expert on this, but this has been my path. I deny the powers of evil as much as I can. And there's so much goodness to absorb, so let it happen. Okay. I think that's the question. Yeah. Okay. Over there.
How did you deal with the trauma of the Holocaust?
How did you deal with the trauma of the Holocaust?
Well, there's scars. The issue of trust. You don't know who's a friend, who's a foe, who's going to denounce you, who's not. I was hidden in an orphanage where the priest denounced me and the nuns saved me, you know, so you never know where it's going to come from. So there's always this thing on guard. And to this day, I'm afraid of uniforms. I mean, I see a policeman and I kind of cringe a little and I realize why it's happening, so it's not a problem anymore. But I notice that it's still there. And there have been many, many books written about trauma that sometimes go through generations because it's genetic in the cells or something. But in each person, there's a choice, and one can reject or accept all that trauma. I didn't know that until I was more grown up than that, but we have free will, and we can work with that to the extent we're allowed. And you can choose to be the good for yourself and for the world.
Thank you, Rosie, for sharing your story. I've had the pleasure of meeting you with Lisa
Hi.
I wanted to ask you how your faith played a role in the miracle of your life.
There's an echo. Yeah. I didn't know much about faith. I was born into a secular family, although I come from a long line of rabbis. So we didn't really have much celebrations of holidays, or I never belonged to a synagogue or a church. And I remember my mother would have a red tablecloth whenever there was some kind of a holiday, and we just ate our supper on the red tablecloth. And until I came to Texas. I mean, every breath is religion and spirituality, and it's really putting me in touch with that. You know? I'm like, whoa, I'm on another planet almost. You know, it's a culture shock. But it's a wonderful learning experience, and it has given me much to think about and to realize that here we are in God's image, and we have to fulfill our purpose no matter what it is, how it is, or what we know about it. But there is the power that guides us, and we have to respect that. Am I? I'm beginning to be a philosopher here tonight. I don't know, didn't expect that. You have wonderful questions here. Thank you.
Now, I have a question about food. I'm not trying to get frivolous, but if we go to an Italian restaurant here, everything has cheese. Is there kosher Italian food at all? Kosher?
I don't need you. I'm sorry. Well, would you guide me into a place like that, please? It's always pure, you know, so I don't mind. But yeah, I think probably there has to be. I know there's one for just about every nationality in Dallas, you know, so why not Italian? Yeah. Are you Italian? Oh. Let's do some research, okay? See.
Grazie mille for being here. Grazie. My question is about art, and you do art, and you have artwork at your home. Did that play a role in either the time that you were on the run, or at what point in your life did art become important?
In my art, yeah.
Play a role in your time, and at what point in your experience, and at what point did art become important to you?
Well, my formal art situation began when I was in college. My education was kind of spotty because I didn't have any education actually until I got to Italy. I was put into the 10th grade without knowing Italian. I mean, I was 10 years old and I was put into the first grade without knowing Italian, so it was a bit of a struggle. And then I did 3 years in one, and by the time I came to the United States, to Massachusetts, I was in the 9th grade without knowing English. So, yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a dizzying time as far as education. But I was a very avid reader, and I taught myself. I see photographs of myself when I was like 3-4 years old with a book under my arm. So I was literate, and I got into Barnard College, which is one of the 7 sisters. And there I decided to major in psychology because I wanted to sort through myself in a way. And that would have given me a way to also contribute to the world in the way I wanted. And my professor came with this white rat going all over him, and I decided to switch majors. I switched to art history. That's how it started. And but then art history doesn't teach you how to do art. So I did most of it on myself with different teachers. So I painted, I sculpted, I did enameling, I did pottery, I did collage. There's a collage out there, an exhibit right now, and sort of to the right here. Several of my paintings and a sculpture are an exhibit right here now. And it shows my journey from Lithuania through Austria, Italy, United States to Dallas. And the Dallas is a bunch of photographs. They're all the same. And they're meant to be the same because it shows the continuity of families, Jewish families. Yeah. So take a look at it outside if you have a chance. But that's how my art started. So very, very non-traditional. Yeah. And that's another.
Thank you again for being here. This question actually holds dear to my heart too, because I'm first generation Greek.
First generation?
Greek.
Oh, Greek.
So my grandfather, he's 96, and my father also immigrated here. So I was just wondering if you came across, I know we're a bit far away for neighbors, but have you come across any Greek Jews?
I haven't come across Greek Jews, but I know what happened in Salonika, and I know what happened in some of the other places in Greece. And you know about the Greek mother of Prince Charles, who is now buried in Jerusalem, who saved Jews in Greece. Take a look at the research on that. It's really fascinating what happened with the Holocaust in Greece. One of the greatest singers in Greece at the time of the Holocaust was Jewish. And they killed her. Then there's anti-Semitism again in Greece right now. And I have not come across, are you, I didn't hear about what generation you are? First. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I have some Greek friends. But not Jewish. I don't think the mic's on.
Speak out loud, I'm good.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Well,
Finally,
thank
somebody
you
I
so
couldn't
much
hear.
for today, and you're one of the most beautiful women I've ever met in my life. I mean, inside and out. I mean, amazing, amazing. So
I don't think you see me blushing.
Well, at least you can hear me. We don't have to go over there.
I can hear you. I can
okay.
hear you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
now I yell. Thank you again for being here. First off, my first question is, well, we have a lot of teenagers. And so my terminology may not be spot on with what we're trying to say, but I feel like they're being herded and put into social media. Do you understand what I'm trying to say as far as being forced into different capacities as you went through your life and things like that? So you could stand up but couldn't and got support and things like that. So what I'm asking is, how can I give an encouraging word, my children, our children, teenagers especially, current day, because the situations are similar to a degree, just meaning being forced into things that they shouldn't be a part of or don't know how to fight. And of course we know it's spiritual. I don't know if that makes sense.
That has been tossed around in academia quite a bit because it has to be age appropriate, first of all. And also, sometimes the children teach the parents because they see injustice when sometimes we don't. And they can be honest more than parents who have safeguards more than they do, because they're spontaneous with this. So my suggestion to you is that you encourage them to speak out when they see an injustice, and be also very conscious of the different shades of gray where personal safety is involved, because we live in a very complicated world right now where some Jews cannot even wear a kippah or a Star of David or anything like that. But there's morality, and that is across the globe, and it cannot be changed with... Yeah. You're welcome.
We'll take one more question. Just one more. I think, Onyx, you won.
Oh, first row. Hey.
First of all, I love you so much. My mom's side, my family is from Lithuania.
Oh,
so,
that's right.
Yes. My question is, have you been back to Lithuania, and have you found like where you grew up and those areas and stuff, is any of it still the same or things that you remember?
Well, you can't step into the same river twice, you know that. But I have been back to Lithuania several times for several reasons. They appropriated the musical scores of my uncle and made them national treasures, and I wanted to honor his memory through his music by making concerts. Germany returned the scores that they had of my composer uncle, and I did put on shows at Harvard, at BU, at Brandeis, in Seattle, in California. I made them, so in a way I fulfilled my duty to him. But I was lied to. I was, and I was stolen by them. On the other hand, I went back and to thank all my rescuers that were still alive at the time, and that was extremely emotional. It was on the Russian times, and my main rescuer, Lida, had been sent to Siberia because she was a landowner after saving me, and she saved a Russian widow with 3 children, and they still sent her to Siberia. So there was all this complicated political stuff going on there. And last year, Kaunas was declared, my city of birth, was declared the cultural city of Europe by EU. And they had my photographs and my mother and my father plastered all over murals, on totes, on everything. I was like the star. And here I am saying, I don't ever want to go back, you know? So it's very, every Lithuanian that I met after the war was very kind to me, very solicitous. As people, I have not met anyone who was anti-Semitic to me after the war. And there were always good people and bad people in everything. In Boston, I even had a German-Jewish dialogue group that I ran to test myself. It was a test of fire. There were 3 of these groups in Boston and only 1 in the entire United States. But Lithuania is the only country, for instance, that won't allow a movie called J'accuse right now in there because it doesn't speak well of them. I'm beginning to worry that Lithuania will take the path of Poland, where it's going to deny their own culpability in anything. Yeah. But the people are just lovely and cultural, and, well, they made the great vodka. Yeah. So still, you know, well, I want to thank you for all the kind words I had today from you. It's going to stain me for quite a while, and I understand this was the last question, so bless you all, and shalom. Oh.
You can sit here. So Kumi's going to come play violin as we are being dismissed. So that's not to like stay and listen to, but it's music to leave with. A couple things. First, please stop by and see Rosian's art. And also, if you are talking with her as she's leaving, it is up to you to ensure that she is seated while you're talking to her. Bad on you if she's not seated. Okay, it's up to make sure she's seated if you're talking to her. The other thing is this Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, right in this room, there will be a panel of people who will be talking about the Holocaust. Lisa Jackie, who is the primary teacher for Jewish ministries here at this campus, will lead the panel. I'll be on the panel. Sam Arnaud, who is a Jewish person from France, he'll be on the panel. And Ari Waldman, who is a rabbi from Baruch Hashem, he'll be on the panel. And so we want to encourage everyone to come back 7 o'clock Tuesday right here. Thank you for coming, and may the Lord bless you. And I hope we meet you again. God bless. Thank you.